It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 30. My recap of episodes 21 through 29.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and thank you for tuning in to this weekly podcast covering how actors make money and stay afloat living the chaotic life of a performer. If you're new to the podcast and haven't subscribed, pull up iTunes or your podcast's app and click the subscribe button. You'll get weekly episodes right when they come out. This is episode 30, titled My Recap of episodes 21 through 29. The show notes for this episode have all the important links referenced in today's show, which you can pull up right now at actingincome.com/episode 30. And now, here's a word from today's sponsor, the FICOR Workbook. So you've learned a lot about financial core from several episodes of the Acting Income Podcast, or maybe you've heard other actors talk about how FICOR changed their lives. Want to know more? Download my ebook on FICOR called The FICOR Workbook. It's nearly 70 pages of extraordinary insight into FICOR, a lot of which you won't find anywhere else on the internet, and definitely not compiled into an easy-to-read resource. It's like a crash course with reliable information about FICOR. And what's great is, if you purchase the FICOR Workbook, it may be a full tax write-off for you if you're an actor, which could be like getting it for free. The FICOR Workbook is available for immediate download on FICOR Central, which also offers some free info on FICOR. To get the FICOR Workbook, just visit ficorcentral.com/workbook. That's ficorcentral.com/workbook. This episode is my third recap episode of the Acting Income Podcast. This episode will help you catch up on some recent past episodes, but it'll also add some additional thoughts on those past episodes. It's a great way to get to know the recent content to see if you want to dive in more. In this recap, I'll cover episodes 21 through 29. I'll share a bit about each episode, and I'll also tell you the link for the show notes for that episode in case you want to look at the notes and links for the episode, or if you want to play the episode from that page. You can just as well find the episode in iTunes or however you listen to podcasts. It should be pretty easy. I've done two other recaps, episode 10 and episode 20. If you want to listen to episode 10, which recaps the first 9 episodes, simply visit actingincome.com/episode 10. And if you want to listen to episode 20, which recaps the 9 episodes before it, visit actingincome.com/episode 20. The past 9 episodes have been interesting. I definitely didn't know how they were going to unfold. At this point in the podcast, I was starting to get to the end of my original ideas of topics to cover and people to interview. I definitely have other ideas for the future, but I was also starting to see holes that needed filling. That made producing the Acting Income Podcast a little more stressful than in the beginning, but it's definitely been worth the challenge to deliver relevant, engaging, helpful content, unlike what you may have heard from other acting podcasts. And yet again, the podcast has been growing. Downloads per day have been increasing, and I've even been setting podcast records every once in a while. It's exciting to see that people have been downloading episodes, which suggests to me that the titles of the episodes resonate, and hopefully the first episode listened to made people want to hear more. Since the first month, the podcast has tripled its download numbers, and it looks as if in October 2015, when I'm releasing this, it'll have quadrupled. But I've been able to grow this podcast in no small part with the help of my guests and their networks. And speaking of networks, episode 21 demonstrated the power of networks to help my guest Sarah Ittner fund her acting career. Her episode is titled, How Network Marketing for Arbonne Funds My Acting Career. On the side, Sarah is a rep for Arbonne. Arbonne has a sort of multi-level marketing setup for its salespeople, but aside from the qualms that might come from MLM setups, Sarah has established a network of clients who buy Arbonne products from her, probably because her enthusiasm for Arbonne's healthcare products is infectious. Sarah lives Arbonne, which makes her job not so much selling as simply helping others find Arbonne products they'll like. And the flexibility of the work means she can audition and even take her Arbonne business on the road with her. If you want to learn how Sarah Ittner set up an Arbonne business, what it costs, and what kind of income she makes, or if you even want to learn how it might fit with your acting career and interest in funding it, listen to episode 21 at actingincome.com/episode 21. Episode 22 was by far the most downloaded episode of the last 9, and has become one of the top 5 episodes so far. And it's probably in part because so many actors are interested in what my guest, Gianmarco Ceresi, had to talk about. His episode is titled, How to Strategize Workshops with Casting Directors, Agents, and Managers to Achieve Your Acting Goals. And it covers those things many actors call pay-to-plays. They're essentially seminars where actors pay to see a casting director or agent or manager, maybe doing a monologue or scene, or doing several weeks of classes. They could be expensive. $35, $40, even $70 I just saw, for 5 minutes of time with a casting director or agent or manager. Gianmarco had a lot of money to use on them, and this means he developed some methods that led him to build a team and land some professional acting work. You can probably save some of your own money and frustration by listening to Gianmarco's episode and learn some practical tips on which kinds of workshops to target to achieve your acting goals. You can listen to my episode with Gianmarco Ceresi on workshops with casting directors, agents, and managers, and read the show notes at actingincome.com/episode 22. Episode 23 is titled, How the Word Professional Applies to You as an Actor. While that was perhaps the lowest performing episode of the last 9, it was maybe my favorite to produce because I got to add in sound effects and audio clips, add in some humor, and also invoke the Oxford English Dictionary. It doesn't really matter if you're into words to dig episode 23. I share in it what I thought the word professional meant when I was called it on a job I was working on. I argue that the word professional probably means I get paid as an actor a lot less than you'd think, or maybe that meaning of the word is pretty insignificant. All in all, the episode aims to clarify what you should be doing if you want to be seen as a professional in your acting career. You can listen to episode 23 on how the word professional applies to you as an actor at actingincome.com/episode 23. I asked my friend, actor Alicia Force, if she had some ideas for an episode of the Acting Income podcast, and maybe it's no surprise that she delivered in unrare form. Alicia is a spot-on acting talent, and her episode 24, titled How to Be a Person First and an Actor Second, offered insights into her catastrophic adjustment to life in New York City and how she was forced to deal with that trauma while also keeping sight of her goal of working as an actor. Alicia's episode got a lot of shares, probably because there are a lot of people who value her perspective and who want to learn how to make it in a big, expensive city. Sometimes you just got to pay attention to your human interests, and your acting interests need to be set aside briefly. But you also got to dream, and dream big. Alicia shares how she balances all three, and how she spends her money in light of those interests. You can listen to my interview with Alicia Force on being a person first and an actor second at actingincome.com/episode 24. Rachel Vanoker was my guest for episode 25, titled How to Make Money Using Your Acting Skills as a Brand Ambassador. Rachel works for a talent agency/staffing agency, and her company hires people of all ages and types for work that really suits actors and their skills. Her company hires not just brand ambassadors, but also hosts, product demonstrators, and you'll just have to listen to the episode for the extensive list of people her company uses. Brand ambassador work in particular is flexible and lucrative. Rachel shares how you can register with her company as well. You can listen to my interview with Rachel Vanoker on putting your acting skills to use as a brand ambassador and read the show notes at actingincome.com/episode 25. Jen Lederer returned to the Acting Income podcast as my first repeat guest for her episode 26, titled How Self-Sabotage Affects the Actor and What to Do About It. The interview was incredible. I have chills on my arms just thinking about it. Because each time you listen to it, there are layers and layers of things to consider about your own inner saboteur. It's also an episode several people have specifically written me about because it's been that powerful of an episode for them. Jen also has a meditation program you can download, and I understand the October 2015 meditation will be on self-sabotage. To get information on her meditation program and to listen to my second interview with Jen Lederer on self-sabotage and what to do about it, pull up episode 26 and read its show notes at actingincome.com/episode 26. I got really busy, so I took a week off from the podcast before launching episode 27, titled How to Work as a Stand-In and Not Lose Sight of Your Acting Goals, with Alana Blair. Alana is an actor and musician who took stand-in work on 2 different television shows for their lead actors, and even some photo double work, with the aim of not just making good money, but also learning the behind-the-scenes of acting. As you learn from Alana's interview, you get a privileged perspective on the filmmaking process when you stand in, and you learn how to be a more prepared actor as a result. Alana shares some tips on making sure not to lose track of your acting interests, and she's also demonstrated some chutzpah in making auditions and only coming back to set a little bit late. The episode also features some of the music she's created. You can listen to that music, as well as her interview, and read the show notes for episode 27 with Alana Blair at actingincome.com/episode 27. Eric S. Robertson was my second return guest on the podcast, and of course I wanted him on because his career had evolved in a significant way since he was last on. Originally, he was on episode 9 in an episode titled Why I Choose to Stay a Non-Union Actor. Well, a few months later, I interviewed Eric for episode 28, titled Why I Went from Non-Union to Phi Corps all in one summer. The title is self-explanatory. Eric explains how another episode on this podcast educated him about financial corps status within SAG-AFTRA jurisdiction, and how joining the union, then immediately resigning from the union to declare financial corps status, would allow him to maintain his regular work as a non-union principal actor, but also get access to union work at 4 times the rate he was making as a non-union actor. Eric shares some of the emotion he felt about joining the union and resigning the union, but his episode helps non-union actors see the merits of union work and how to still do non-union work legally. This episode is going to endure, for sure. You can listen to my interview with Eric S. Robertson on why he went from non-union to Phi Corps all in one summer, and read the show notes at actingincome.com/episode 28. For episode 29, I reached out to Keisha Zoller, an actor, improviser, and all-around comedienne, whose name popped up in a Washington Post expose about diversity issues at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York City. The article shed light on the plight of persons of color in the improv training school, intimating that the school is paying lip service to an interest in diversity, but doing nothing really tangible. Keisha is an improv teacher at UCB and used to be a diversity coordinator there, and she mirrored the sentiments of students who felt underrepresented on the UCB theater's stages or in its classes. And in my interview with her, she makes a strong case for why improv communities should pay attention to diverse voices. I titled her episode, How to Navigate Diversity Issues in Improv Communities to Increase Your Acting Opportunities, because sadly, it seems that that's what marginalized people may need to do if they want to land prestigious acting jobs in a community that isn't that diverse. That said, the episode aims to heighten one's awareness of bias, and Keisha says her improv teaching underscores that people on the improv stage can be anything, not just a very narrow ethnic stereotype. The interview bolstered my appreciation of diverse voices, and it also drove home that if diversity is truly valued, then it needs follow-through. You can listen to my interview with Keisha Zoller and read the show notes, which include a link to the Washington Post article, at actingincome.com/episode 29. So, there you have it. These last 9 episodes were about making money enthusiastically and spending money wisely, remembering your acting career and learning how you might be sabotaging it, using your acting skills to serve a production as well as to serve commercial interests, and it was about honoring underrepresented voices, whether they be of non-union actors, Phi Corps actors, or actors who feel marginalized in their performance communities. Overall, these last 9 episodes have been about surviving first, thriving second. And if you didn't already know or couldn't already tell, acting is a hefty pursuit, fraught with challenges to your well-being, your finances, your status, your psyche. And as I've said before, this podcast seems to mirror me, my concerns and interests and evolution as a person first and actor second. And the concerns and issues presented in these last 9 episodes expose what I seem to be wrestling with. I wrestle with how to support myself with side work that I love, that takes advantage of my acting skills when my acting work dips. I wrestle with spending money on workshops with casting directors or agents or managers, when spending money on them tends to mean taking a whole day off from making any money because it creates a schedule conflict for me. I wrestle with the conflict of feeling marginalized as an actor, despite having reminders that I'm a professional. I struggle with stand-in work, the conflict of doing a job that is more akin to an actor's servant than an actor, and what being good as a stand-in does to my self-worth. I struggle with answering the question of whether this pursuit or that pursuit is supporting my acting interests or actually sabotaging them. With all this struggling and wrestling, my brain's a bit like a wrestling mat right now, but I can say this. When I book acting work, true acting work, when I'm employed as an actor for my acting skills, I get so excited. And that and that feeling is what drives me. And that feeling, that elation, is worth the struggle. So, if I could ask of you just one little thing. Think of me. I'm thinking of you. That's the show. This episode was sponsored by the FICOR Workbook from FICOR Central. To download the FICOR Workbook, visit ficorcentral.com/workbook. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode30, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. If you'd like to pitch an episode idea, visit actingincome.com/pitch. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, visit actingincome.com/advertise. And if you love the content of this podcast, share your boundless love with a review of this podcast on iTunes at actingincome.com/iTunes. I'm Ben Hauck. Thanks for listening. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com.